In this open delivery yard, an operator positions a transport machine to move a tall glass panel as a slight shift causes the load to become unstable. Handling large glass panels requires appropriate lifting equipment, secure support, and careful load positioning. Inside this bustling foundry, workers manually support a glowing metal strip while another worker moves beneath the suspended material as the load suddenly shifts. Manually supporting heavy heated materials creates serious stability and burn hazards. A change in grip, fatigue, or unexpected movement can cause the load to shift or fall without warning. Anyone positioned beneath or near the material may have very little time to move clear. Mechanical lifting equipment provides controlled support and keeps workers separated from the load during handling. Keep pedestrian traffic completely outside active material handling zones. Use properly rated mechanical hoists or lifting equipment to support and position heated materials, and never allow personnel to work beneath an unsupported load. Deep inside this excavated municipal trench, technicians inspect a large underground pipeline as a sudden pressure release sends a massive burst of water outward. Working near pressurized underground utility lines creates serious safety risks. If a pipeline develops a rupture, stored pressure can release water rapidly and with considerable force. In a confined trench, the sudden flow can reduce visibility, affect footing, and make it difficult for workers to move safely. Fully isolate and depressurize underground utility lines before beginning inspection, repair, or modification work. Use appropriate detection and monitoring systems to identify pressure or structural issues while keeping personnel at a safe distance whenever possible. Inside this bustling steel facility, a technician prepares a massive metal coil for lifting as the rigging suddenly shifts and sends the suspended load swinging sideways. Off-center rigging can cause a suspended load to move unpredictably as tension is applied. If lifting cables are not properly aligned with the load's center of gravity, the initial lift may produce both vertical and sideways movement. This swing can bring heavy materials into nearby work areas and make them difficult to control. Check that lifting equipment is correctly positioned and that the rigging arrangement is suitable for the load before applying tension. Establish clear exclusion zones around suspended materials and keep workers outside the potential swing path. Above this remote transport crossing, a heavy truck moves across a large metal bridge as the aging structure suddenly shows signs of structural failure. Aging bridges can develop fatigue, corrosion, or weakened connections that reduce their ability to support heavy loads. When a vehicle exceeds the structure's approved capacity, or when existing damage goes undetected, the added load can increase stress on already weakened components. A structural failure can develop rapidly and leave vehicles and occupants with limited options for escape. Inspect bridge supports, joints, and load-bearing components regularly for signs of fatigue or deterioration before allowing heavy vehicles to cross. Verify posted weight limits and redirect oversized or heavy transport through routes with appropriately rated structures. Inside this industrial park warehouse, a heavy transport machine moves bulky cargo across the floor as the load shifts and the equipment begins to tip toward a nearby worker. Moving loaded machinery across uneven surfaces can affect stability, particularly when heavy materials are positioned high above the base. Turning, braking, or sudden changes in direction can shift the load's center of gravity and increase the risk of tipping. Keep transport routes firm, level, and free of obstacles before moving heavy equipment. Position bulky or heavy materials as low as practical during transport, and keep workers outside designated operating and fall zones. On this stationary flatbed truck, a man steps backward near the side gate and suddenly loses his balance, catching the metal edge as he moves beyond the safe working area. Moving backward on an elevated transport deck reduces visibility and makes it harder to judge footing and distance from surrounding barriers. Uneven surfaces, shifting loads, or an unexpected change in position can further affect balance. Even with a side gate in place, working close to the edge creates a fall hazard if someone loses their footing. Face your direction of travel when moving around raised platforms, and check the area behind you before taking backward steps. At this riverside construction zone, a massive crane lifts a heavy pole as the machine's rear begins to rise under the shifting load. Lifting heavy materials beyond the equipment's rated capacity or working radius can seriously affect crane stability. As the load extends farther from the machine, the resulting forces can shift the center of gravity and place additional stress on the crane's structure and supporting surface. If stability is compromised, the equipment may begin to tip or lose its intended operating position. Calculate the load weight and working radius against the crane's rated capacity before every lift. Confirm that the crane is positioned on suitable ground and use the manufacturer's required stabilization systems and procedures. At this auto repair lot, a man rolls a tire forward when it suddenly tips sideways and catches on his clothing, causing him to lose his balance. Rolling heavy circular objects requires careful control because their weight can shift quickly if they become unstable. A large wheel that tips unexpectedly can move sideways and create a snagging hazard, particularly when loose clothing is involved. Once clothing becomes caught, the sudden change in movement can affect the worker's balance and make it difficult to step clear. Wear properly fitted clothing when handling or working around heavy equipment and materials. Keep a stable stance and use appropriate handling methods when moving large wheels or other rolling objects. Inside this quiet security booth, a man reads his paperwork as a heavy glass panel suddenly becomes detached from its mounting and drops toward the workspace below. Overhead, fixtures depend on properly secured brackets, frames, and mounting hardware to remain stable. If these components loosen, corrode, or become damaged, a large panel can shift or detach unexpectedly. Heavy suspended fixtures can create a serious falling object hazard for anyone positioned underneath. Inspect overhead fixtures, brackets, and mounting points regularly for signs of wear, looseness, or damage. Where practical, position workstations away from heavy overhead structures. Inside this busy fabrication shop, a technician works near a rapidly spinning axle as his loose shirt moves dangerously close to the rotating equipment. Exposed rotating machinery can catch loose clothing, hair, gloves, or other materials and pull them toward moving components. Keep hands, clothing, and other materials away from exposed moving parts and ensure appropriate machine guards are in place. High above this active facility, a man moves along a narrow steel edge as his boot suddenly slips near the open shaft. Walking along narrow, elevated surfaces without proper edge protection creates a serious fall hazard. Limited footing and slippery metal can make it difficult to maintain balance, while an open shaft leaves little room to recover from a misstep. Even when a fall arrest system is available, an improperly positioned lifeline can allow unwanted swing movement after a fall. Proper platforms, guardrails, and correctly installed fall protection systems provide a safer working environment. Use properly designed platforms with secure guardrails for elevated access routes. Inside this manufacturing plant, a technician moves materials backward near a large rotating cylinder as his jacket gets dangerously close to the spinning surface. Working near rotating machinery requires clear visibility and adequate separation from moving components. Walking backward can make it harder to judge the distance between the worker and nearby equipment. If loose clothing comes into contact with a rotating shaft or cylinder, it can become caught. And pull the material toward the machine. Face your direction of travel when moving materials near operating machinery. Mark clear exclusion zones around exposed equipment and keep loose clothing and other materials away from rotating components. Across this wide warehouse floor, an operator drives an industrial lift with its mast raised as it approaches an overhead structure and suddenly strikes a concealed utility line. Operating lifting equipment with a raised mast can significantly reduce available overhead clearance. Warehouses may contain pipes, sprinkler systems, electrical services, or other utilities above the normal travel path. Contact with these systems can cause structural damage, service disruption, or an unexpected release of water or other materials. Maintaining proper clearance and keeping lifting equipment in its designated travel configuration helps reduce these risks. Lower forks and lifting components to the manufacturer's recommended travel position before moving through the facility. Identify overhead utilities and clearance restrictions in advance. Outside this residential high-rise, a man clings to a thin utility wire above an alley as his grip begins to fail. Using an unapproved exterior cable as a means of support creates a serious fall hazard. Utility wires and similar cables are not designed to carry a person's weight and may not have the structural capacity or secure anchoring required for fall protection. Losing grip or damaging the cable can result in a sudden fall from height. Properly designed fall protection systems provide controlled support and reduce reliance on improvised equipment. Use properly rated fall arrest or work positioning systems secured to approved structural anchor points before working at height. Within this busy automated workspace, a man steps into the operating path of a moving mechanical arm as it suddenly swings through the area. Automated machinery can move along predetermined paths with significant speed and force. Entering the equipment's operating zone without proper authorization can expose workers to unexpected contact with moving components. Because machinery may continue its programmed movement, workers need clear separation from active equipment rather than relying on reaction time. Mark clear exclusion zones around automated equipment. Across this paved transport terminal, a heavy container truck begins moving with its rear doors unsecured as the cargo shifts toward the open end. Moving a loaded vehicle before securing its rear doors creates a serious cargo control hazard. Acceleration can cause unsecured materials to shift inside the container and place additional pressure on the rear doors. If the locking mechanisms are not properly engaged, the doors may open unexpectedly and allow cargo to fall from the vehicle. Verify that all rear door latches and locking mechanisms are fully secured before moving a loaded vehicle. Keep workers clear of the rear loading area while the vehicle is being started or repositioned, and secure all cargo according to the transport equipment's requirements. At this active timber yard, a driver lifts a massive log with a forklift as the overhanging load shifts the machine forward and begins to affect its stability. Handling long materials with a forklift requires careful attention to load length, weight, and center of gravity. When a large portion of the load extends beyond the forks, the resulting leverage can shift the forklift's balance and reduce stability. An oversized or improperly positioned load can cause the machine to tip or lose control, particularly during lifting or movement. Check the weight, dimensions, and center of gravity of oversized timber before lifting. Keep loads properly positioned within the forklift's rated capacity and follow the manufacturer's guidance for handling long materials. Outside this residential building, a spotter steadies an extended climbing frame as a worker descends, causing the structure to shift unexpectedly on the pavement. Relying on a person to stabilize an unsecured climbing structure can create a serious fall hazard. As a worker moves up or down, their changing weight can affect the equipment's balance. If the frame is not properly secured, its feet may shift on a smooth or uneven surface, causing the structure to move unexpectedly. Secure portable climbing equipment using approved anchoring and stabilization methods before use. Position the base on a firm, level surface and use suitable stabilizers or restraints to prevent unwanted movement. Within this modern office, a man works at his laptop as the large glass desk suddenly develops a major fracture and begins to give way beneath the workstation. Large glass work surfaces can become hazardous when they are damaged, improperly supported, or subjected to loads beyond their intended capacity. Scratches, chips, loose fittings, or uneven weight distribution can weaken a glass panel over time. If the surface fails unexpectedly, broken glass and displaced equipment can create hazards for anyone nearby. Regular inspection and appropriate furniture design can help reduce these risks. Inside this busy repair workshop, an operator guides a massive cylinder beneath an overhead crane as the lifting sling suddenly fails while the load is suspended. Suspended loads depend on properly selected, inspected, and rated lifting equipment. A damaged, worn, overloaded, or incorrectly used sling can fail under tension and release the load without warning. Once support is lost, the heavy cylinder can fall rapidly. This creates a significant risk to anyone beneath or near the load. Inspect lifting slings, hooks, and rigging connections before every lifting operation and remove damaged equipment from service. Keep all workers outside the designated drop zone. Inside this open-air work area, a worker passes close to an exposed spinning shaft as her loose clothing moves dangerously near the rotating equipment. Exposed rotating machinery can catch loose clothing and draw it toward moving components with little warning. Once fabric becomes entangled, the rotation can continue pulling the material inward before the worker has time to react. This creates a serious entanglement hazard, especially around high-speed shafts and other unguarded moving parts. Install appropriate fixed guards around exposed rotating components to prevent accidental contact. Secure loose clothing, hair, and other items before working near operating machinery, and maintain a safe distance from moving parts. At this public intersection, a flatbed truck makes a wide turn as several unsecured metal cylinders begin shifting off the trailer. Round or cylindrical loads can roll easily when they are not properly restrained. During turns, braking, or sudden changes in direction, vehicle movement can cause unsecured cargo to shift laterally. Without suitable blocking, chocks, and tie-downs, heavy cylinders may roll off the flatbed and create a serious hazard for nearby road users. Proper load restraint is essential before transport begins. Secure cylindrical freight with appropriate chocks, blocking, and rated tie-down systems before moving the vehicle. Inspect anchor points and restraints to ensure the load remains stable throughout transport, particularly during turns and sudden stops. Inside this residential living room, a worker climbs a tall stepladder and reaches the top section as the frame suddenly begins to tip sideways. Standing on the top cap or an unapproved step of a stepladder can significantly reduce stability and increase the risk of a fall. Elevating the body higher raises the center of gravity, while reaching or shifting weight can make the ladder easier to tip. If the ladder moves unexpectedly, there may be little time to regain balance. Keep both feet on approved steps and maintain stable contact while working from a stepladder. Choose an appropriately sized access platform for the task rather than standing on the top cap or reaching beyond a stable position. At this roadside excavation zone, a heavy digging bucket breaks into the soil when an unexpected underground utility strike triggers a sudden burst of flame. Excavation sites may contain buried gas lines, electrical cables, water mains, and other utilities that are not visible from the surface. Striking a concealed service with digging equipment can cause fires, electrical incidents, flooding, or other serious hazards. The danger can develop almost instantly, leaving workers with little time to respond. Confirm the location and depth of underground utilities using approved detection and locating procedures before excavation. At this roadside disposal zone, a man pushes a heavily loaded wheelbarrow up a steep plank when the weight suddenly becomes too difficult to control. Moving heavy loads up steep inclines increases the force required to maintain forward movement. As the load becomes harder to push, the operator may lose control or be forced to stop unexpectedly. Once forward motion is lost, the wheelbarrow can roll backward, creating a serious struck-by or crushing hazard. Using a suitable ramp angle and appropriate handling equipment reduces the physical demands and improves control. For particularly heavy materials or steep inclines, use mechanical lifting or transport equipment rather than relying solely on physical strength. On this active neighborhood street, a worker rides on a rising pallet as the lifting equipment approaches an overhead power line, creating a sudden electrical hazard. Overhead power lines can energize cranes, lifting equipment, loads, or nearby conductive surfaces if contact occurs or electrical clearance is breached. Electricity can travel through metal structures and create serious shock or arc flash risks for anyone in contact with the equipment. Working from an elevated or suspended load also increases the consequences of losing balance or being startled by an electrical event. Identify and maintain the required clearance from overhead power lines before operating cranes or other lifting equipment. Never use a suspended load as a platform for workers. In an outdoor brickyard, a spotting task becomes unsafe when a tall stack of bricks loses balance near reversing path. Freestanding masonry stacks can become unstable when they are tall, unbraced, or resting on uneven ground. Vibration from nearby transport movement can shake the base and weaken the stack's balance. Once the columns begin shifting outward, the bricks can move as an uncontrolled material path beside the vehicle. Safe traffic guidance must include awareness of both the moving truck and the stored materials around the route. Spotting active traffic requires checking the full surroundings, not only the vehicle. Unbraced brick stacks should be kept away from reversing paths and work positions. Create a clear route, brace stored materials, and keep a distance. To keep learning from these important workplace safety lessons, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Stay aware, stay safe.